Few buildings on the planet are as awe-inspiring as the Mecca Clock Tower. At first glance, it seems unreal, a structure so enormous that it seems to defy the laws of physics and even human common sense. Standing just a few meters from the Kaaba, the holiest site in Islam, this tower is not just a feat of engineering. It is a spiritual statement, a colossal beacon at the heart of the Muslim faith. Standing 600 meters tall, the Abraj al-Bait, as it is officially called, dominates the skyline of the holy city of Mecca with an almost divine presence. Not only is it 35 times taller than London's Big Ben, it also has the largest artificially constructed space on the planet. The tower is visible from more than 80 kilometers away, a landmark that defies deserts, valleys, and time. And with an estimated cost of $16 billion, it is among the most expensive structures ever built by humanity. Comparisons with other iconic towers are inevitable, but almost unfair. While the Eiffel Tower enchants with its metallic lightness, and the Empire State Building carries the weight of New York romanticism, the Clock Tower of Mecca is something completely different. It was not born out of a desire to show off or symbolize economic power. It was created to represent sacred time, God's time. But for many who look from the outside, it is still a mystery. Little is said about it outside the Islamic world. Its size is known by few, and its spiritual function by even fewer. After all, how can a building house, at the same time, a hotel, a prayer room 600 meters high, and the largest clock on the planet? How can something so physical, so concrete, be at the service of something as immaterial as faith? These questions only increase the fascination, because the tower is not there just to be observed. It is there to be felt, to touch something invisible in each of the pilgrims who contemplate it during the Hajj, the annual pilgrimage that takes millions of Muslims to Mecca every year. The tower is silent, but its presence screams. There is no way to ignore it. While the world marvels at skyscrapers in New York, Dubai, or Shanghai, few realize that, in the heart of the Saudi Arabian desert, an unprecedented structure redefines the very idea of monumentality, and it does so not with arrogance, but with reverence. Unlike skyscrapers that symbolize business, status, or technology, this tower is a bridge between heaven and earth, and everything about it, every meter, every ton, every mosaic, was designed to reflect this connection. But how did something so grandiose come to be next to the Kaaba, in one of the holiest places on the planet, where only Muslims are allowed to enter? Who were the men and women behind this feat? And how did faith shape one of the most daring feats of modern engineering? In the center of the city of Mecca beats a spiritual heart that moves millions every year, the Kaaba. It is the point toward which all Muslims around the world turn during daily prayers. It is the final destination of a journey of faith called the Hajj. And it is next to this sacred place that one of the most impressive structures ever built by man stands, the Clock Tower of Mecca. But this tower was not conceived as a simple building. From the beginning, there was a goal that went far beyond steel, concrete, and glass. It was necessary to create something that would be worthy of its heavenly surroundings. A monument that not only reflected the power of modern architecture, but also bowed in spirit to the divine presence of the Kaaba. This delicate balance between faith and technique was one of the greatest challenges of the project. And not only in terms of engineering, the city of Mecca is closed to non-Muslims. This meant that all professionals involved in the construction, from engineers to workers, had to be practicing Muslims, or become one. Many of the engineers responsible for the project were foreigners: Germans, French, Indians, Koreans. Men with established careers in complex projects, but who had never faced such a personal challenge. In order to cross the gates of Mecca and contribute to that construction, one more step was necessary: conversion to Islam. And that is what many did. Not out of obligation, but out of reverence. Out of understanding the spiritual magnitude of that mission. They studied, delved deeper, immersed themselves in a new universe, and found there a purpose greater than any structural calculation. The tower then began to take shape, not just as a technical construction, but as a symbol of transformation, of connection, of surrender to the sacred. Situated just steps from the site, where Abraham and Ishmael are believed to have built the first structure of the Kaaba, the tower is not a modern intruder. It stands as a guardian, a giant minaret whose presence amplifies, and never competes with, that of the Kaaba. During the Hajj, when more than 3 million faithful gather in Mecca, the tower offers shelter, guidance, and structure. But it also offers silence, and, in a way, it disappears. Because, even with all its grandeur, it never overshadows the sacred simplicity of the black cube that rests beside it. It is as if, at that precise point in the world, time, faith, and engineering have made a pact. And it is from this pact that one of the most symbolic constructions in modern history is born. When the clock on the Mecca Tower turns on its green and white lights during the call to prayer, something powerful happens. Time, which normally governs life with its rush, obligations, and routine, seems to bend. Because at that moment, it is not the world's time that counts. It is God's time. And this clock is not there just to measure the seconds. It is there to guide the hearts. The Mecca Clock Tower was conceived for something much more than architecture. It was conceived as a new spiritual axis of Muslim time, a reference that would serve as a guide not only for pilgrims in Mecca, but for the entire global Islamic community. It was necessary to create a visible symbol of the unification of sacred time. For centuries, the Greenwich Meridian dictated the planet's official time. But for the Muslim world, there was a long-standing desire to establish a new zero point, a new center based on Mecca. The tower was built for this purpose, to create a clock that would broadcast the exact time of Mecca to all corners of the Islamic world. A new north, a new time. And to do this, it needed to be more than grand. It needed to be unmistakable. The hands measure 23 meters and 17 meters, so large that they make Big Bens look like toys. The dial is 43 meters in diameter. It is covered in golden mosaics and equipped with 2 million LEDs. At night, it lights up like a spiritual beacon, visible from dozens of kilometers away. And it doesn't just inform, it summons, it calls, it unites. The sound of the call to prayer, transmitted from the top of the tower, echoes through the city with a power of 21,000 watts. It is a call that crosses streets, penetrates buildings, and finds space within the heart of every believer. For Muslims, time is profoundly sacred. Each of the 5 daily prayers has its exact moment. It is not just a question of the clock. It is a question of submission to divine will. And having such a powerful visual reference, positioned right next to the Kaaba, transforms the religious experience into something even more intense. The tower, in this sense, acts as a new minaret, but an unprecedented minaret, not only in height, but in symbolism. It doesn't just tell the time, it conveys a constant reminder that the time of faith is greater than the time of the world. And even those who are not in Mecca feel this call. In far-flung places like Jakarta, Istanbul, Karachi, or Cairo, the clock on the Mecca Tower is followed by millions. Not as an obligation, but as a spiritual alignment. Because when it shines, when its hands move, when its voice echoes, it reminds the world that there is a deeper, more silent, more eternal time. No structure of this magnitude is born without a struggle, and in the case of the Mecca Clock Tower, every inch of construction was achieved with sweat, risk, and engineering pushed to the limit. What seemed impossible on paper became reality in the desert, but not without facing forces as challenging as gravity itself. The original project called for a tower 450 meters high. It was already something gigantic, but as the plans progressed, a bold proposal emerged to expand the project to 600 meters and include the largest clock in the world at the top. This decision, which would make the tower unique, also turned each phase of construction into a technical battleground. The first obstacle was invisible but decisive: the ground. Mecca is an ancient city with irregular geology and fragile foundations. The available area could not support a weight of more than 82,000 tons. For comparison purposes, the Shanghai Tower, which is similar in height, weighs more than 500,000 tons. The difference was striking, and the challenge was monumental. The solution came from an inspiration that mixed tradition and innovation to create a hollow, lightweight and yet resistant structure like the Eiffel Tower. This required the use of special concrete with high-performance additives and precision steel. Each floor was designed to have large internal spans, which reduced the total weight without compromising stability. But it wasn't just the ground that imposed limits. The climate in Mecca also played against it. Temperatures that exceeded 50 degrees Celsius during the summer, winds with gusts of over 150 kilometers per hour, and frequent sandstorms forced engineers to create coatings, cooling systems, and structures that could withstand an extreme environment. The winds were particularly dangerous as the tower gained height. At the top, gusts reached 200 kilometers per hour, enough to compromise any element that was not aerodynamically designed. That's why the clock face was designed in a concave shape, with the aim of reducing the direct impact of air currents. And the gigantic hands were made of carbon fiber to combine lightness and resistance. Nothing was simple. Many components had to be tested before going up. Any mistake on the ground meant a risk of tragedy hundreds of meters up. Each module was assembled and disassembled several times before being finally installed. A tower of this scale does not allow for improvisation, and time, paradoxically, was short. The project had to be completed before the Hajj season, with millions of faithful on the way. The schedule was tight, and work shifts ran day and night in scorching heat and under extreme surveillance. But it wasn't just technical talent that drove this project. It was faith. Many engineers, accustomed to large-scale projects in the West, said that there they felt something different, a type of pressure that came not from deadlines, but from reverence. They were building something that would touch millions of souls, a building that would not only be admired, but venerated. And so, day after day, meter after meter, the tower rose, overcoming calculations, fears, storms, until it touched the sky. As the tower rose into the sky of Mecca, another challenge loomed: the creation of the largest clock in the world. It was not enough to be large. It had to be accurate. It had to be visible from kilometers away. It had to withstand the weather, the wind, and the desert. But above all, it had to be worthy of the place where it would be installed. The responsibility was given to the German company Perot, one of the most renowned in the world for manufacturing monumental clocks. From the beginning, the engineers knew that they were faced with an unprecedented project. The dial had to be 43 meters in diameter. The carbon fiber hands had to measure 23 meters, the hour hand, and 17 meters, the minute hand. No structure ever built had even come close to these dimensions. Furthermore, each face of the clock, of which there are 4, facing all cardinal points, had to be illuminated with 2 million LEDs. The light had to be intense, but not aggressive. Green and white were the colors chosen for their association with Islam and for their ability to be perceived from long distances, even in the midst of frequent sandstorms. And here, between cutting-edge technology and millimeter precision, the human factor came into play. To apply the golden mosaics that cover the clock and much of the facade, no less than 98 million individual pieces were used. Each of these pieces was tested to resist fire, extreme heat, impact, and fading. They were produced by a Venetian company that had to automate processes that were previously done manually, but that, in the end, still required the touch of human hands. More than 100 coating specialists worked day and night, applying each piece. It was exhausting work, often invisible, but essential. Every inch of the tower bears the sweat of these men, and even if their names are never remembered, their marks remain there, shining in the Meccan sun. Most of the tower's components, including parts of the clock, were manufactured in Dubai. The reason? The need to assemble and test everything in a controlled environment before facing the unpredictable conditions of Mecca. It was a crazy logistical feat. Gigantic pieces transported by truck, crossing hundreds of kilometers of desert. Each transport required precision, safety, and faith. Perhaps the most symbolic part of this entire construction is the structure that crowns the tower, the Golden Crescent. It is the largest carbon fiber structure in the world, with 3 internal floors. Inside there is a prayer room, a meeting room, and a small office. It is, literally, the highest point ever used by humans in a building. Installing it was a calculated risk. Strong winds, extreme limits of the cranes, and the tension of positioning such a symbolic piece in such a vulnerable place. But once again, the impossible was overcome. And as each part fit together, the tower gained its soul. Because behind all the technical grandeur, there is a silent story of men and women who left their days, their prayers, and their hopes there. A construction made of concrete, yes, but also of faith. When the lights of the clock tower of Mecca were turned on for the first time, something changed on the horizon of the Islamic world. It was not just the beginning of a new architectural phase. It was the birth of a symbol. A silent but powerful declaration of faith, modernity, and unity. The official inauguration was performed by the King of Saudi Arabia. At that moment, the dark sky of the holy city was cut through by green and white lights radiating from the 4 clock faces. The sound of the adhan, the call to prayer, echoed loudly, amplified by the tower's loudspeakers. And the millions of worshippers in Mecca looked up. For the first time, they saw sacred time illuminated by the human touch. Despite its size, complexity, and beauty, the clock tower remains little known in the West. It does not appear often in architectural magazines. It is rarely mentioned among the great feats of modern engineering. And for many outside the Islamic world, it simply does not exist. But within Islam, it is an icon, not only because of its grandeur, but because of what it represents. The union between past and future, between tradition and innovation, between faith and science. It shows that it is possible to build something colossal without losing touch with the spiritual. That steel can serve the soul. During the Hajj, when Mecca receives up to 3 million pilgrims, the tower offers shelter, guidance, shade, and rest. It is more than a building. It is a presence. Many sleep at its feet, pray under its light, and are moved when they hear the call echoing from its loudspeakers. It is part of the journey. It is part of each person's story. And even for those who participated in its construction, the feeling is similar. Many foreign engineers never returned to Mecca after the project was completed. Some never saw the finished tower with their own eyes. but all of them carry in their memories the weight and privilege of having been part of something greater. Some report that it was the only project they cried when it was finished. Others say that when working so close to the Kaaba, they felt an inexplicable peace, as if each stage of the construction was also an act of prayer. The tower transformed those who touched it, and that is perhaps its greatest mark. Today, as the world continues to race toward more speed, more data, more technology, the Mecca Clock Tower remains where it has always been. Firm, serene, shining over the desert. It does not compete for attention. It does not scream for recognition. It simply fulfills its mission. It marks time. But more than that, it marks an era. An era in which faith and engineering met, in which men and machines worked not for vanity, but for purpose. An era that perhaps one day will be remembered not for height records, but for what we can build when we look up to the sky with humility. And perhaps, as we look back at this silent, golden, eternal tower, we can ask ourselves, what are we building in our own lives that can touch infinity with such dignity? If this story touched you in any way, like the video right now, it helps us continue to bring stories that deserve to be remembered. Comment below. What impressed you most about the Mecca Clock Tower? And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because here, each story is a bridge between what we are and what we can still be.